You don't arrive at the attic. You disappear into it. One Tuesday evening in October, your father opens a door behind a shelf in a bakery storeroom, and your family steps through, and the shelf closes behind you, and the world you used to live in stops existing. No ceremony. No address to leave behind. One moment you are people with a front door, the next you are weight in someone else's ceiling. The attic is low and long and smells permanently of bread from the bakery below. Liselle says it smells like Saturday. She is 7 years old and means it as a compliment, and she is right, because the smell of bread is the only thing in this space that doesn't feel like hiding. Everyone lets her have that. On the third day, Liesel finds a piece of chalk in your coat pocket. She uses it to mark the beam above her sleeping spot. 1 mark. She tells you she is counting. You tell her counting is pointless. Your mother says let her count. Your father says that counting means you believe there is something to count toward. You don't say anything after that. You watch her make the mark, and you think your father is right, and you are glad someone said it. The baker's name is Herr Brandt. You know this from a conversation heard through the floor in the first week. You never meet him. You never see him. What you know of him is entirely composed of what you hear, a slow, deliberate shuffle across the bakery floor every morning at 5 o'clock, the clatter of the first trays going in, the low sound of a man working alone before his apprentice arrives, and the bag. Every morning at 7, a small paper bag appears at the attic hatch. Bread, sometimes a piece of hard cheese. Once, in the second week, a single boiled egg that Liesel held in both hands, like it was made of something rare. The bag never comes with a note. Never comes with a knock. It simply appears, as regular as the chalk marks on the beam, as certain as the smell rising from below. You never ask why he does it. You are afraid that asking will be the thing that makes it stop. The first time Hauptmann Weber comes, you know him only by his boots. He arrives on a Thursday. Liesel marks Thursdays with a slightly longer line, and his footsteps are different from Brandt's. Heavier. More certain. The kind of steps that have decided in advance that the floor belongs to them. You hear him ask Brandt about inventory, flour allocation, whether the upper space is used for storage. Brandt says yes, boxes mostly, nothing of interest. Weber pauses. You count the pause because there is nothing else to do with your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then his footsteps move toward the door, and the door closes, and the building goes quiet. 4 seconds. You will count that pause every Thursday for the next 8 months, and it will never be more or less than 4 seconds. You don't know what happens inside 4 seconds in the mind of a Wehrmacht officer standing in a bakery asking about boxes. You only know that after 4 seconds he leaves. And leaving means you are still here. After enough weeks, the pause stops feeling like terror. It starts to feel almost like something you can rely on. This is the most dangerous thing that happens in the attic. You begin, slowly and without meaning to trust it. Brandt's apprentice is named Otto. He is 19 and broad-shouldered, and for the first month he has no idea you exist. You know this because of how he moves below unhurried, sometimes humming, once laughing at something Brandt said with a laugh that fills the whole building. Innocence sounds different from performance. You spend enough weeks listening to learn the difference. The day he figures it out is a Wednesday. He drops something heavy near the hatch. A flour sack, you think. And in the silence after the impact, you shift your weight instinctively, and the floorboard gives one small creak in reply. Enough. You hear Otto go completely still below. The stillness lasts longer than Weber's pause. Then he picks up the flour sack and goes back to work, and you don't breathe properly for an hour. The next morning there are 2 bags at the hatch. Same bread, same cheese. 2 bags. No note, no conversation. Just the plain acknowledgement that he knows and has already decided what to do with knowing. Your mother holds the second bag for a long time before she opens it. Liesel draws a small circle around that morning's chalk mark, her own notation for when something in the attic changes. 3 days later, a small square of paper comes folded inside the bread. 1 word in pencil, safe. The following week, fog. The week after, soldiers gone. You begin keeping them in your coat lining. 1 word each week. The weather of a world you cannot see. Liesel announces her birthday 6 weeks before it arrives. She wants a cake, a song, and 1 present. You explain the situation. She says she heard you the first time, and she still wants all three. December comes and you have nothing. Then, the morning of her birthday, the hatch bag is heavier than usual. Inside, a bread roll with a single raisin pressed into the top. The raisin is perfectly centered. Someone thought about where to put it. Otto's bag has a small cloth doll folded inside, made from burlap and tied with kitchen string. Liesel holds the doll in one hand and the raisin roll in the other and cries, the way only 7-year-olds cry completely, without embarrassment, face first into your mother's shoulder. Your father watches this and laughs. Just once. Just briefly. It fills the attic the same way Otto's laugh fills the bakery below, and you realize you had forgotten what that sound costs and what it gives back. In the evenings, your father teaches you chess with pieces he carves from bread crusts. You are becoming good. He is becoming proud. It is the one corner of the attic where he is still your father and not just a frightened man trying to hold his shape together. February brings the cold and a different unit of soldiers who don't know the building, not Weber's men. A search. 2 sets of boots. Unfamiliar voices. Methodical. You spend 6 hours pressed into the false wall at the back of the attic, a wall you have used before, but never thought to question. 6 hours without moving. Liesel has her chalk in her fist and your mother's hand is over her own mouth and your father stands closest to the hatch with his body between it and the rest of you, which is all he has to offer and which is everything. When the soldiers leave and the attic settles back into its own quiet, you let out a breath that has been waiting 6 hours to exist. And then you notice something you have been inside too many times to properly see. The false wall's wood is old, not new construction old, old before you arrived old. End of quote. The hinges are worn smooth. The lumber has been painted over once, maybe twice, in colors that don't match the bakery's current walls. Brandt built this before you came. Significantly before. He built it for whoever would need it. Not for you specifically. For whoever. You don't say this out loud. You sit with it in the dark, the way you sit with most things, in the attic held, not spoken. There is a woman in the building across the alley. You have watched her through the single gap in the roof slates for months. She watches the bakery. She watches Otto arriving each morning with a focus that isn't curiosity, it's arithmetic. In March, you tell your father. He says, say nothing to Brandt. Say nothing to Otto. If we are wrong, we've endangered them for nothing. If we are right, we've endangered them differently. You stop looking through the gap. The woman keeps watching. Your father stops playing chess. The pieces sit in a small pile and he doesn't touch them. He eats his portion last every night and pushes half toward Liesel without comment. You notice. Your mother notices. Nobody says anything because saying it would require knowing what to do about it, and there is nothing to do. You just watch the man who taught you chess get a little further away each week. The knock comes on a Thursday in April. Not Weber's Thursday. A wrong Thursday. Multiple boots at once. You hear Brandt answer the door below, his voice steady. The voice of a man who has answered this knock before. The officer in charge asks about the upper level. Brandt says, boxes. Same as always. Then you hear a voice you know. Weber. He is with them. He is the senior officer on this call. He received the tip and came himself. You press into the false wall. Liesel finds your hand in the dark. She doesn't make a sound. She is 7 years old, and she already understands what silence costs and what it buys. You hear Weber ask Brandt for the property registration. Papers shuffle. A long silence. Then Weber tells the unit that this building was inspected and cleared under his authority, that the occupancy record shows only the baker and his apprentice, and that the tip appears to be a misdirection. His voice is the same voice that counted 4 seconds every Thursday for 8 months, measured, certain, the voice of a man who has already decided what he is going to say before he walked through the door. The soldiers file out, their boots down the stairs, across the bakery floor, out into the street. Weber is the last to leave. Before he goes, he pauses at the base of the attic stairs. Not 4 seconds this time. Longer. Whatever he is doing inside that pause you will spend the rest of your life wondering about and never answering. Then he leaves. The street door closes. You hear nothing. Liesel releases your hand. She presses her chalk to the beam and makes the longest mark she has ever made. Then she draws a circle around it. Her biggest yet. 3 days later, Otto's note is different. Not one word. 3. He knew before. Weber received the tip and came to the bakery with documents already prepared. He had time between reading the report and arriving at the building, and he used that time to write the paperwork that cleared you. He did not walk in, hoping to find nothing. He walked in, having already decided what he would find. You read the note 3 times. You fold it into your coat, lining with the others. Safe. Fog. Soldiers gone. He knew before. The collection is starting to feel like a record of something larger than weather. By late spring, you can hear something in the distance that isn't thunder. It arrives in low, irregular pulses that travel through the attic floor. Your father closes his eyes when he hears it, and something comes back into his face that you haven't seen since before the chess pieces. He starts touching the wall of the attic less. He starts sitting away from it. Liesel begins making 2 chalk marks some mornings instead of 1. As if the days are going faster now, and 1 mark isn't enough to hold them. Then the bag stops. 3 mornings in a row with nothing at the hatch. No Otto either. The attic goes quiet in a way that feels different from hiding quiet. It feels like something has been removed from beneath the building's floor, some structural thing that was holding the whole arrangement up. Your mother makes the bread last. Your father stands near the hatch each morning and listens and says nothing. Liesel still makes her marks on the beam, but she makes them smaller now, as if trying to take up less. On the 5th morning, Otto comes up through the hatch. He has never done this before. Always the bags, always the notes, always the careful distance of the floor between you. When his face appears in the opening, you understand before he speaks. He sits on the attic floor with his back against the wall, the same wall your father used to lean against, and he tells you that Brandt was taken 6 days ago. Not for the attic, for a network. Multiple buildings. Multiple hidden rooms across the district. Someone from a separate location was questioned, and the name Brandt was in the answer. Otto has brought a cloth sack. He sets it on the floor between you and opens it, and inside are Brandt's notes, a ledger, handwritten, small, careful script in black ink. Your father picks it up. His hands are not entirely steady. He turns through the pages slowly, reading. Then he stops. He reads 1 page twice. Then he hands it to your mother without speaking. The ledger is a record. Names, entry dates, exit dates, brief descriptions. Yours is the 8th entry. 7 families before you, each one noted in the same careful hand, each entry ending with a single word. Dirch. Through. As in, they made it through. 7 entries. 7 Dirch. 7 families who sat in this attic and ate from the hatchbag and trusted the 4-second pause and got out the other side. Your entry has no closing word. Brandt was taken before he could write it. Near the back of the ledger is a page that is older than the others. The ink is slightly faded, the paper stiffer. It is a diagram. The attic. The false wall, its dimensions, the hinge placement, the lumber specifications, the load-bearing points. At the top of the page, a date. 3 years before your family arrived. He built it 3 years before you. He built it without knowing who would need it. Not for you. For whoever came. And then he made the bag appear every morning at 7, and he never introduced himself, and he never asked for acknowledgement, and he never explained any of it. You sit on the floor of the attic that he designed for a stranger, and you try to find the edges of what that means, and you cannot. The last page of the ledger is not a record. It is a letter, never sent, addressed to a name, Miriam Brandt. Otto tells you quietly that Brandt's wife died in 1938. Her family had been Jewish. She had converted when they married. He kept her photograph behind the bakery counter, in a frame that faced the wall, which everyone assumed was accident, and which was not. He kept baking bread and leaving it at a hatch and saying nothing and asking for nothing. He kept a letter to a woman who could no longer read it, in a city that had decided her history was a crime. 6 weeks after liberation, a letter arrives addressed to the family above the bakery. The resettlement office forwards it with the quiet efficiency of people reassembling thousands of broken things back into lives. It is from Weber. He writes in a formal hand that relaxes, slightly, toward the end of the page. He writes that he heard about Brandt 3 days before the war's end. He writes that Brandt died the morning of the 14th, 4 days before the liberation that everyone could hear coming, and that Brandt did not quite reach. He writes that in 8 months of Thursday inspections, he never once found anything in a bakery that stored only boxes. He writes that the morning the tip came in, he sat with it for 2 hours before he drove to the building. He writes that some things you count long enough, they stop being arithmetic and become something closer to a position. He writes that Brant was the bravest man he ever walked past without stopping, which is not a compliment he can give cleanly, but which is the only honest thing left to say. He does not apologize. He does not ask for anything. He signs it with his rank and his name and nothing else. You read the letter, sitting on the attic floor. Liesel's chalk marks are above your head on the beam, 194 of them, each morning accounted for the long Thursday mark with its large circle near the center of the row. You count them again. 194 days of a bag at the hatch. 194 mornings of bread from a man who built a wall 3 years before you needed it and wrote 7 dirts in a ledger and never once needed you to know his name to do it. Downstairs you can hear Liesel in the bakery. Otto has kept it running. He will keep it running. You will learn for the next 40 years, the same flour, the same trays, the same 5 o'clock shuffle across the floor. You hear Liesel laugh at something he says, and her laugh fills the building the way laughter is supposed to fill buildings, without asking permission, without checking whether the moment is safe enough. The chalk marks are still on the beam. You leave them. You leave them for whoever comes next, because in a world that builds false walls before it knows who will need them, someone always comes next. They should know that someone was here, that someone counted, that the bag was always at the hatch, and the pause was always 4 seconds, and that was the whole story. That was enough.